Everyone chases Pappy Van Winkle. But the reason it tastes the way it does has little to do with Pappy. It starts with a man that most people have never heard of. His name was William Larue Weller. He was born in Kentucky in 1825, at a time when Kentucky was already becoming the center of American whiskey. And unlike Jack Daniel, he didn't build a global brand. And unlike George Remus, he didn't build an empire. What he did was quieter than that. He changed what Americans expected bourbon to taste like. And more than a century later, that idea would help create one of the most sought-after bourbons in the world. By the mid-1800s, William Larue Weller enters the whiskey business. But he was not a distiller. He was a merchant and a wholesaler. He's selecting barrels and he's buying from distillers and he's selling whiskey under his own name. Now, at that time, whiskey wasn't always trustworthy. Not because it was expensive, but because you never really knew what you were getting. There were no federal standards at the time, no bottled and bond laws, no guarantees. Some merchants blended whiskey. Others added coloring, flavorings, or sweeteners to imitate age and good quality. If it looked like good whiskey, and if it tasted close enough, someone could sell it. Some accounts from the era even describe tobacco extracts, prune juice, and other additives finding their way into counterfeit spirits. For consumers, buying whiskey often required a leap of faith. And even when it was genuine, bourbon could be rough, hot, spicy, and aggressive. A drink made for farmers, for river workers and laborers. Nobody talked about smoothness. Nobody talked about refinement. Around this time, William Larue Weller began promoting a different style of bourbon. At the time, most bourbon used rye as the secondary grain, which gave it spice and edge. And that worked. But Weller saw something different. Instead of rye, he used wheat, and that changed everything. Now, this sounds simple, but it's not, because you're not just changing flavor, you're changing how the whiskey ages, how it develops, and how it behaves in the barrel. Whether he was chasing a smoother flavor, a better product, or simply a way to stand out from his competitors, the result was revolutionary, because wheat really changed things. Less spice, more sweetness, a softer finish. And while that may not sound remarkable today, in the mid-1800s, it really was a radical idea. And here's where we get to connect all the things we've talked about. Years later, a young traveling salesman joins W.L. Weller & Sons. His name, Julian Van Winkle. At the time, it didn't mean much, but bourbon history is about to change. Because sometimes the most important relationships in bourbon history don't look important at all when they begin. After Prohibition, Julius Van Winkle joins forces with the Stitzel family. Together, they formed the Stitzel-Weller Distillery in 1935. William Larue Weller himself never sees it. He passed away in 1899. But his influence is everywhere because that wheated bourbon profile, the style Weller helped popularize, becomes the foundation for some of the most legendary whiskey bottles ever made. Old Fitzgerald, and eventually what the world would come to know as Pappy Van Winkle. And today, that legacy is still alive. The Weller name is now part of Buffalo Trace Distillery, owned by Sazerac, and it's become one of the most sought-after bourbons in the world. Part history, part quality, part scarcity, and maybe a little mythology. But it all traces back to one simple idea, a decision made in the 1800s about what should go in the glass. Jack Daniels built consistency. George Remus proved demand never goes away. And Weller, he changed what people wanted in the first place. William Larue Weller didn't build the most famous bourbon. He built the foundation for the one people chase. More than a century after his death, most bourbon drinkers still know the bottle, even if they've never heard the man's name. And if you want to taste this story, pour a glass of Weller Antique 107. But while you're at it, pair it with a smooth, medium-bodied Dominican cigar. Something balanced. Because this story isn't about power or chaos. It's about precision. If you enjoyed this episode of Men Behind the Bottle, subscribe to Sticks and Spirits. Because next time, we'll tell the story of the family that may have built bourbon itself. So until next time, keep your sticks lit, keep your spirits high. Cheers.